Evil sister tried to break up her sister engagement right before the wedding, got caught red-handed and disowned. Oh honey, pull up a chair and let me tell you about the Morrison family down on Maple Street. You know I don't like to gossip, but Lord have mercy, what happened to that family? It still gives me chills. I've been living in this neighborhood for 37 years, seen families come and go, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the tragedy that unfolded with those Morrison girls. It all started with two sisters, Delilah and Ruby. Now, I remember when their mama, Patricia, first brought them home from the hospital. Delilah was the firstborn, came out looking like a porcelain doll with those big blue eyes and blonde curls. 3 years later, little Ruby arrived, and bless her heart, she looked like a little potato next to her sister. Not ugly, mind you, just ordinary. Brown hair, brown eyes, a bit chubby. The kind of baby that makes you say, oh, she'll grow into her looks. But here's where things get interesting, sugar. Sometimes the pretty ones peak early, and the plain ones? Well, they bloom when it matters most. I watched those girls grow up from my kitchen window. You know, the one that faces their backyard? Perfect view. Delilah was always the star. Dance recitals, beauty pageants, straight A's without trying. That child could bat her eyelashes and get away with murder. And Patricia? Oh, that woman worshipped the ground Delilah walked on. My beautiful genius, she'd call her at the grocery store, while poor Ruby trudged behind carrying the bags. Ruby, bless her soul, tried so hard to keep up. I'd see her practicing piano until her fingers hurt, studying until midnight while Delilah was out with her parade of boyfriends. The child worked twice as hard for half the recognition. It broke my heart, I tell you. The real trouble started in high school. You remember the Henderson's boy, Tyler? Sweet kid, worked at his daddy's hardware store? Well, Ruby had been sweet on him since 7th grade. They were lab partners, study buddies, the whole 9 yards. That girl lit up like a Christmas tree whenever he was around. One day, I'm watering my petunias when I see Ruby bringing Tyler home to work on some science project. Poor thing had spent all morning baking cookies. I could smell them from my yard. She was wearing her nicest dress, had even attempted to curl her hair. Tyler was carrying her books, laughing at something she said, and I thought, finally, something good for that child. But then Delilah came home. Honey, I watched that girl size up the situation in 2 seconds flat. She sauntered over in those tiny shorts she liked to wear, tossing that blonde hair like she was in a shampoo commercial. Oh, Tyler, I didn't know you were coming over. Ruby, you didn't tell me we were having such cute company. 3 weeks later, Tyler was Delilah's boyfriend. I found Ruby crying behind the garden shed, and when I asked what was wrong, she just shook her head and said, "It's always been this way, Mrs. Mel. Always." That became the pattern, you see. Anything Ruby wanted, Delilah took. Not because she wanted it, but because she couldn't stand Ruby having something she didn't. When Ruby got accepted into her dream college, State University's engineering program, Delilah suddenly decided she wanted to go there too. But instead of studying, she met some rich boy named Harrison Blackwell III. Dropped out after 1 semester to play housewife. Now, I'm not one to judge, but that Harrison boy, something wasn't right about him. Too smooth, too polished, like a snake in an Armani suit. His daddy owned half the county, and Harrison threw money around like it was confetti. Delilah was in heaven. Designer bags, fancy cars, trips to Paris. She'd post it all on that Instagram thing, making sure Ruby saw every blessed picture. Meanwhile, Ruby? That girl graduated summa cum laude, got herself a job at that big tech company downtown. Started at the bottom, worked her way up. No handouts, no shortcuts, just good old-fashioned hard work. I was so proud of her, I baked her a congratulations cake. Patricia barely managed a "that's nice, dear" when Ruby told her about her promotion. But here's where the story takes a turn, honey. You know how they say pride comes before a fall? Well, Delilah's fall started when she found Harrison in bed with his secretary. Classic story, really. The prenup he'd made her sign meant she got nothing but her designer clothes and a bruised ego. She moved back home at 29, divorced, unemployed, and bitter as week-old coffee. Patricia fussed over her like she'd survived a war. My poor baby, she'd coo. That horrible man didn't deserve you. Meanwhile, Ruby had just been promoted to senior developer, bought herself a little townhouse on the nice side of town, and was living her best life. That's when I met Ruby's Ethan. Lord have mercy, that man was fine. Not in that flashy, Harrison way. Ethan Chin was the kind of handsome that snuck up on you, tall, kind eyes, a smile that could light up a room. Software architect at Ruby's company. They met during a team-building retreat, bonded over coding and terrible coffee. He was smart, funny, came from a good family. His mama was a teacher, his daddy a pediatrician. Good people. I'll never forget the day Ruby brought him to meet her parents. She was glowing, y'all. Actually glowing. I was trimming my roses when they pulled up, and she waved at me with the biggest smile. Mrs. Mel, come meet Ethan. I liked him immediately. Firm handshake, looked you in the eye when he talked, actually listened when you spoke. He was clearly smitten with Ruby, couldn't take his eyes off her. The way he laughed at her jokes, held her hand, opened doors for her, it was like watching a romance movie. But then Delilah appeared. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, I know because I could see her bedroom window from my sewing room. Full makeup, her tightest dress, those ridiculous high heels she could barely walk in. She floated down those stairs like she was Miss America, not a divorced woman living in her childhood bedroom. Oh my, she purred, extending her hand to Ethan like she expected him to kiss it. Ruby didn't mention she was bringing home such a specimen. I watched Ethan's face, and honey, that man didn't even blink. He shook her hand briefly, professionally, then immediately put his arm around Ruby. Nice to meet you. Ruby's told me a lot about her family. Delilah's face. Oh, if looks could kill. She spent the entire dinner trying to monopolize the conversation, touching Ethan's arm, laughing too loud at his jokes, finding excuses to lean across the table. Poor Michael, that's Ruby's daddy. He looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Patricia just sat there, oblivious as always, talking about how beautiful Delilah looked. But Ethan? That man was a rock. Every time Delilah tried something, he'd redirect to Ruby. Oh, that's interesting, Delilah. Ruby, didn't you mention something similar at work? Or Ruby's the expert on that, actually. It was beautiful to watch. After dinner, I saw them in the garden. Ruby was upset. I could tell by the way she was wringing her hands. Ethan pulled her close, and I heard him say, "Baby, I don't care if your sister looked like Beyoncé herself. I'm here for you. Only you." They got engaged 6 months later. Ethan proposed at sunset on the company rooftop garden, had the whole thing planned out with Ruby's favorite flowers and a string quartet. Their coworkers filmed it, went viral on that TikTok thing. Even I cried watching it, and I don't cry easy. But Delilah, oh, that girl went nuclear. First, it was the text messages. Ruby showed me some of them when she came over for tea, worried about her sister. Innocent enough at first. How's Ethan? Does he like cats? I just got the cutest kitten. What's his favorite restaurant? I have a Groupon. Then came the social media stalking. Delilah went through every photo Ethan had ever posted, liking and commenting on pictures from years back. She started showing up at places they frequented, their gym, their favorite coffee shop, the bookstore where they had their first date. What a coincidence, she'd say, dressed to the nines at 7 in the morning. The breaking point came during wedding planning. Ruby had asked Delilah to be her maid of honor, against my advice, mind you. She's still my sister, Mrs. Mel, Ruby had said. Maybe this will bring us closer. Sweet, naive child. Delilah turned every wedding planning session into the Delilah show. When they went dress shopping, she tried on wedding dresses just for fun and made sure to send Ethan photos. During cake testing, she fed Ethan samples with her fingers. At the venue tour, she accidentally tripped and fell into his arms. But the worst part? The calls. Late-night calls to Ethan's phone. Ruby was working late one night, and Delilah called Ethan at 2 a.m., sobbing about her trauma from her divorce, how she needed someone to talk to, how Ethan was the only one who understood her. Ethan, being a decent man, answered that first call out of concern. When he realized what was happening, he told her to talk to her parents or a therapist, that it wasn't appropriate to call him. The next time she called, He woke Ruby up and put it on speaker. They heard Delilah slurring her words, saying things like, "I know you want me, and Ruby doesn't deserve you." Ruby finally had enough. She confronted Delilah, and honey, I heard that fight from my backyard. Ruby laid it all out. Years of theft, manipulation, and cruelty. Delilah's response? She ran crying to Patricia, claiming Ruby was jealous and paranoid, that she was accusing her of trying to steal Ethan when she was just being friendly. Patricia, predictable as sunrise, took Delilah's side. Called Ruby cruel, selfish, said she should be supporting her sister through her difficult time instead of making wild accusations. That's when Ruby made the decision that probably saved her life. She cut them off. Blocked Delilah's number, limited contact with her parents, and focused on her wedding. It was hard on her. I'd see her crying in her car sometimes when she came to visit. But Ethan's family embraced her like she was their own daughter. His mama, Linda, told me once that girl needed a real mother. I'm happy to be that for her. The wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, just close friends and Ethan's family. I was honored to be invited, sat right behind Ethan's grandma. Ruby looked radiant in her simple but elegant dress. Ethan cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. See, Delilah had found out the venue through a cousin who couldn't keep her mouth shut. I saw her silver Honda in the parking lot and my blood ran cold. But security was tight. Ethan had made sure of that. She couldn't get in. What she did instead was worse. While everyone was at the reception, Delilah broke into their honeymoon suite. The hotel had footage of her sweet-talking a new desk clerk, claiming she was the bride's sister and wanted to leave a surprise. She scattered rose petals, left champagne, and crushed up enough sleeping pills in Ethan's champagne glass to knock out a horse. Her plan, as it came out later, was to have Ethan pass out, stage a scene that looked like they'd been together, take photos, and destroy the marriage before it even started. She'd even brought lingerie to change into. But here's where Delilah's narcissism became her downfall. She couldn't resist sampling the champagne while she waited. Maybe it was nerves, maybe it was habit, but she drank from the wrong glass. Ethan and Ruby found her 2 hours later. She was unconscious on their bed, wearing that ridiculous lingerie, the drugged champagne glass still in her hand. They called 911 and she was rushed to the hospital. Stomach pumped, barely survived. The police found her phone full of incriminating texts to her friend Marissa, detailing the entire plan. You'd think that would be rock bottom, right? A wake-up call? No, honey. It got worse. Delilah was charged with breaking and entering, attempted assault, and a host of other crimes. Patricia mortgaged the house to pay for her lawyer, convinced her poor baby was having a mental breakdown, that it was all a misunderstanding. The trial was a circus. Delilah showed up every day dressed like she was going to a cocktail party, playing the victim. But Ruby had kept everything. Every text, every email, every voicemail. Ethan's friend who'd recorded the original incident at their wedding had kept the footage. The hotel had the security tapes. Character witnesses lined up to testify about Delilah's pattern of behavior. She got 5 years. I was in the courtroom when they read the verdict. Patricia wailed like someone had died. Michael just sat there, staring at his hands. Ruby and Ethan held each other, exhausted but relieved. But prison, honey, prison didn't reform Delilah. It made her worse. She spent 5 years stewing in her own poison, blaming everyone but herself. She wrote letters to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the victim of her jealous sister's conspiracy. She managed to charm a few people on the outside, convinced them she'd been framed. Built up a whole fantasy about how Ethan had actually loved her, how Ruby had stolen him. When she got out, she was 35, unemployable, and more bitter than ever. Patricia had lost the house paying for lawyers and appeals. They were living in a rundown apartment on the wrong side of town. Michael had stress-induced heart problems. Their marriage was hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, Ruby and Ethan had built a beautiful life. They'd bought a house in a nice suburb, not too far from me, actually. I'd drive over sometimes for lunch. They had 2 kids by then. Lily, age 4, looked just like Ruby but with Ethan's smile. And baby Marcus, 18 months, Ethan's spitting image with Ruby's gentle nature. Ruby had started her own software company. Ethan had become a director at his firm. They were that couple everyone envied, still held hands, still laughed at each other's jokes, still looked at each other like newlyweds. Their kids were happy, well-adjusted, loved. Everything Delilah thought she deserved but never worked for. The last time I saw Delilah was 3 months ago. I was at the grocery store when I spotted her by the pharmacy counter. Honey, I almost didn't recognize her. Prison had aged her 20 years. Her once golden hair was dull and streaked with premature gray. Those pretty features had hardened into something sharp and mean. She was picking up prescriptions, a lot of them. She saw me and tried to duck away, but I called out to her. Old habits, I guess. Delilah, honey, how are you? The look she gave me, it was like staring into an empty well. I'm fantastic, Mrs. Mel, she said, her voice dripping sarcasm. Living the dream. I asked about her parents, trying to be polite. She laughed, this harsh, bitter sound. Mom's in denial, Dad's barely functional. But hey, at least Ruby's happy, right? That's all that matters. Delilah, I started, but she cut me off. Did you know she had another baby? A girl this time. Posted all about it on Facebook. Perfect little family, perfect little life. Built on lies, but who cares about truth anymore? I wanted to shake her. Honey, you need to let this go. Move on with your life. She smiled then, and it chilled me to the bone. Oh, I'm moving on, Mrs. Mel. Don't you worry about me. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, she was dead. The official report said accidental overdose. Mixed her prescriptions with alcohol. They found her in that dingy apartment bathroom. Patricia found her when she came home from her shift at the diner. Oh yeah, she'd had to get a job at her age. Can you imagine? But I knew better. That girl had been dying slowly for years, consumed by jealousy and hate until there was nothing left but an empty shell. She couldn't stand watching Ruby live the life she thought she deserved, couldn't accept that happiness was earned, not owed. The funeral was. Lord, it was awful. Patricia completely fell apart. Blamed everyone, Ruby for abandoning her sister, Ethan for leading her on, the justice system for persecuting her baby. Michael had another heart attack right there at the graveside. He survived, but he's in a nursing home now. Patricia lives alone in that apartment, surrounded by photos of Delilah from her pageant days, talking to them like she's still alive. Ruby came to the funeral. I sat with her in the back. She cried, not for the sister who'd tormented her, but for the sister she'd never had. The one who could have been her friend, her bridesmaid, her children's aunt. Ethan held her hand the whole time, their kid safe at home with his parents. After the service, Patricia confronted them, screaming, wailing, saying they had Delilah's blood on their hands. Ruby just stood there, taking it, tears streaming down her face. But Ethan, quiet, gentle Ethan, stepped forward. Mrs. Morrison, he said, his voice steady but sad, Delilah made her choices. Every single one. Ruby gave her chance after chance, forgave her again and again. You enabled her, excused her, never held her accountable. If anyone has blood on their hands, it's you. Patricia slapped him. Right there in the funeral home parking lot, in front of God and everybody. Ethan didn't even flinch. He just took Ruby's hand and walked away. That was 6 weeks ago. Ruby's pregnant again. Didn't announce it this time, but I can tell. She's got that glow, you know? They're looking at houses in another state. Ethan got a job offer in Seattle, and I think they need a fresh start. Can't say I blame them. I'll miss them something terrible. Watching those babies grow, having Ruby over for tea, seeing Ethan help my Harold with yard work. But sometimes, honey, you gotta leave the past behind before it drowns you. I still see Patricia sometimes, wandering around the old neighborhood like a ghost. She stops at their old house, stares at it like she's waiting for her girls to come running out. The new owners had to call the police twice. She's living in the past, in a world where Delilah was perfect and wronged, where Ruby was the villain who stole her sister's happiness. But I know the truth. We all do, those of us who watched it unfold. Delilah wasn't born evil. Lord knows I don't believe in bad seeds. But she was given everything except the one thing that mattered: boundaries. Consequences. The word no. She flew too close to the sun, that girl, thinking she could take whatever she wanted because she was beautiful. But beauty fades, honey. Character is what lasts. And Delilah's character was as empty as a designer purse with no wallet inside. Ruby sent me a letter last week. They're settling in well. Lily loves her new school, Marcus is walking everywhere, and the new baby is due in the spring. Ethan's job is going great, and Ruby's company is thriving with remote work. They're happy. Really, truly happy. She ended the letter with something that stuck with me. Mrs. Mel, I used to think I was cursed, being Delilah's sister. But now I realize she was the cursed one. She had everything: beauty, brains, opportunities, but she could never be satisfied. She spent so much time trying to take what was mine that she never built anything of her own. I pray for her and for Mom. But I'm free now. We're free. And that's the truth of it, sugar. Sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't what happens to us, but what we do to ourselves. Delilah created her own destruction, brick by bitter brick, until it all came tumbling down. I water my petunias and think about those two little girls playing in the yard all those years ago. One golden and glorious, the other plain and patient. Funny how life works out, isn't it? The golden one tarnished herself with hate, while the plain one polished herself into something precious with hard work and love. Makes you think, doesn't it? About what really matters in this life. It ain't beauty, money, or getting everything handed to you. It's about character, honey. Building something real, something lasting. Ruby learned that early. Delilah never learned it at all. And that, my dear, is the saddest part of this whole sorry tale. Some stories don't have happy endings, honey. Some people write their own tragedies, one selfish choice at a time. All we can do is learn from them, love our families, and make sure we're building up instead of tearing down. Now, how about another piece of coffee cake? All this talking has made me hungry, and Lord knows we need something sweet after such a bitter story.